Coming up, Alicia Malone joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hi, everyone. It's Illeana Douglas, and I'm here with the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast with my lovely co-host, Tamara Berg. We've got a lot to get to.
And we're live. We're really live.
We're really live.
We're live,
Thanks,
live.
everyone. It's fun to do it live. That way you can see me mess up in real time. Okay, we have so much to get to.
Yes, we do.
Trailblazing Women is coming up starting Mondays in October on Turn to Classic Movies.
I'm so excited. I was watching your Facebook Lives as you were taping, and so
Yes.
you've got some great guests coming up.
Amazing guests. I was pulling them to the side and getting help for all of my projects. But having Callie Curry on was a particular highlight for me because of the 3 years we've been doing the show. She's just a personal hero for me. Thelma and Louise is just the greatest. So that was a really great interview. More to come. Okay, I've got to the other big thing going on, which I just find hysterical, is in the midst of everything else, is the Megyn Kelly Jane Fonda stare down.
It happened yesterday.
Yes. Now, I personally had to laugh because I had a stare down like that with Jane Fonda when I asked her, I thought, a pretty innocent question about...
This is the first thing I thought of when I saw this interview went down. I thought, oh, Illeana's got something to say.
Yeah, we were talking about the way we were, and I mentioned how Barbara Streisand's hair changes in the movie, and that back in the old days, like that seemed to be how you signified female empowerment. And she just stared at me and said, "That's what you equate the way we were, just her changes in her hair." And I was like, well, Jane, then we got into a whole thing about coming home and how her hair changed, and eventually she came around to my side.
Wisely.
But it was amazing, and she's like I'm an idol of mine. My God, Jane Fonda. But what I found to be hysterical about the whole thing is that Megyn Kelly is asking Jane Fonda if she's had work done, and right next to her is Robert Redford, who has clearly had a facelift or two, and like he just skates by.
Sure, of course.
So in my opinion, and I don't know what other people think, number one, it's like, what did your mother teach you? It's kind of inappropriate.
Yeah.
You don't ask a lady.
Age, weight, or surgery.
Yeah.
The three things you don't ask a lady.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just don't look for scars when you meet me. Don't look at my ears. No. And so that, yes, I do think it's inappropriate. Who cares? I remember when I was a kid watching Gloria Swanson, she'd come on Merv Griffin, and she'd talk about Gaylord Hauser and how she ate wheat germ and yogurt, and that's why she looked so amazing. And of course, I grow up and I'm like, oh, she'd go to Switzerland and have facelifts. She and Merle Oberon, they look pretty pulled. But I thought that, so back in the day, just let us make believe. So that's number one. Number two, men having...
the double standard of...
Can you imagine, how mortifying? They must think that, pardon the pun, women have pretty tough skin. Can you imagine saying to Burt Reynolds, I got to ask you, Burt.
No, of course not. That's horrifying.
The face, but yet we feel it's perfectly okay to do the, what happened to her face thing, which I just think is dreadful.
Yeah. Well, remember the whole thing? Oh, God, I just forgot her name.
Renee.
Yes. We talked about that on the show, didn't we? Yeah. About how they just grilled her about that. Well, but Jane Fonda had a really good kind of comeback. She said, I've had plastic surgery. I've talked about that. That doesn't matter. What matters is realizing you can always get better. That you have to keep taking leaps of faith. It gets harder as you get older. You have to stay brave and keep trying to go beyond your comfort zone and see what you need to get to become who you are supposed to be.
Yes, and I think that the other point for an actor is that you work so hard on a film and you go on a talk show to promote it, and you have to go wherever they tell you to go.
Yep.
You've got 5 minutes to talk about your movie that you're working with Robert Redford.
Yeah.
You guys, it's like you've done movies together. You have a history and a relationship, and that's what. And I relate when Jane Fonda said, "Why are we talking about this?"
Yeah.
It's like I would have asked so many more interesting questions about them working together, from Barefoot in the Park and Electric Horseman and things like that. And I just thought it was a wasted opportunity, and I just thought it was an embarrassing, a really embarrassing moment.
Yeah, and a lot of people are talking about it. It's not just us. So
yes,
I think Megyn Kelly's going to have a little.
And the other
stuff coming at her.
Funny, two serious things. I want to do two sort of movie things. I saw a beautiful movie last week. The last movie, which I really loved, was Ingrid Goes West, and also The Little Hours. They're both, I think, on VOD right now. Fantastic little different indie films. But last week I saw Brad Status, the Mike White movie, and I just loved it. I thought it was really great. And 90% of it is talking, which is my favorite kind of movie anyway. I love when nothing. I mean, of course things happen, but just people. Interesting people talking is good. So I love that movie. Go see that movie. And I don't know if anybody's watching the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary.
I have it taped. I'm going to start it this weekend.
It's a work of art, and very difficult to watch. But I'm learning so much, and just in terms of film technique, my God, Ken Burns. And I shouldn't say, I'm going to catch myself. It's not just Ken Burns. It's what's his wife's name? Novak.
Nope, don't know. Sorry. His lovely wife.
His lovely wife,
who is his partner in business as well.
Yes, and it's like either Ann Novak or Kathy Novak, something like that. So apologies. I'm doing it too. I should mention both of them made this fantastic documentary that is incredibly heartfelt and wonderful. So I've been watching that. And my last little movie comment is
Lynn Novak.
Lynn Novak, thank you.
Marissa.
Thank you. I apologize. See, going live, and I messed it up, and we fixed it within seconds. I love technology. The death of Hugh Hefner. Now,
yes.
Long rumored in Westwood Cemetery, which is where Marilyn Monroe is buried, there's the empty spot right next to her. Now, long rumored it was that Hugh Hefner had purchased this spot, and he's going to be next to her forever. So I'm very, very curious to see if this is going to be true. But I've been laughing how much. Why are people celebrating? I love, my hero, of course, Jerry Lewis, gets all this he didn't think women were funny, which of course he never said ever, ever, ever. He gets all this flack, but Hugh Hefner, who made women, undress and wear bunny outfits, and God knows he set us back 100 years, is celebrated.
So revered.
He's suddenly, people are like, yeah, he was really a great man. Which I think is, I began to wonder if the whole women's movement maybe was a backlash, was a response to Playboy, because Playboy was started in the 50s, and then Gloria Steinem started Ms. Magazine in 1972, and she went underground as a bunny. Mm-hmm. But when I went back and I was looking at the pictures, of him in his round bed, and it's just like, I can't believe we thought that was normal. I grew up, I was a hippie. So there were like naked people and art books and things. We had like Calder books of naked sculptures and hippies swimming naked parts. So, there was no real need for Playboy. And that would have been like a very kind of bourgeois thing in our artsy bohemian lifestyle. So take that, Playboy. So let's bring in Alicia Malone. I'm done. I had a lot of sleep last night, so I've got a lot of energy. Happy fall, everyone. I want to talk about Alicia Malone, who I adore. She is a film reporter, a host, a writer, a self-confessed movie geek. She's done a TED Talk, for God's sakes, 2 of them. And currently she is the host on Filmstruck, which we love, a cinephile run by Criterion Collection. And, of course, Turner Classic Movies. So here she is. Oh, and her new book, my goodness, Backwards and in Heels.
I've got a lot going on. I
hold
apologize.
You got to hold the book up. You'll be like your mom. Hold the book up, honey.
Yep. Here we go.
There it is, Backwards and in Heels. please welcome Alicia Malone. Thank you so much for being
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So I have to ask you, of course, because we were just talking about the Jane Fonda thing.
Yes.
Do you have any comments on it? I just thought it was so bizarre, but
I know. Well, I think there's a large part of me that says, why does she get asked this question when, we were talking about this before, when Robert Redford is sitting next to her and they'd never ask him that same question.
Never.
And it is always about looks when it comes to women.
Yeah.
That frustrates me. Although looking back, she has been vocal about it before, so maybe that's what Megyn Kelly was going for. And I think at the moment, Megyn Kelly's trying to establish her own voice. So she's trying to do this thing between entertainment and hard news, which is a hard balance to do.
Yeah.
To get people on in the premise of talking about their movie and then hit them with some hard-hitting questions. And I like the way that Jane managed to segue back to her movie. Same time, would not want to be on the receiving end of that stare.
Of the stare?
No.
Did you ever get the stare?
I've never talked to her. I'm scared of her, though.
She's very
But I've
intimidating.
had a stare many times.
She's very intimidating. But I love her. I mean, it's like I grew up, my whole childhood was, she was in like every movie I ever saw.
I love her. She was great with being such a feminist warrior and establishing herself apart from her father. And that's who I talk about her and her dad in my book as well. But you've had the Jane Fonda stare.
Oh, she's so, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was, because as I said, seeing her in so many movies and I had so many, not only her early movies, just her whole transition of who she was happening in real time. And I read her books, and her books were very impressive. So I just thought it was, as I said before, like, my God, you only have 5 minutes, and that's what you would.
That's the one. I know. That's hard. You need to segue slowly in an hour or something if you're going to go for that.
In the old days, they would have said, "So did you guys make out?" That when I was like out at every thing was like, "So did you like making out with Robert De Niro?" I was like, "Well, it was a rape scene, a brutal rape scene." That's a good question. Thank you. Did you like making out with Matt Dillon? Like that's every
so
movie.
True. Used to always be that question. And
really?
How was the sex scene? It's like, oh God. It's never fun, I imagine.
Do you know that they always do the sex scenes first in a movie?
Really?
Yes, because they're convinced that actors are going to fool around anyway and then break up.
I think that would be so hard to launch into that with someone you don't know.
It's hard. Well, it's mainly horrible for dieting purposes because you'll starve yourself.
Because you know that scene's
If
coming
I
up.
see someone eating a candy bar, I'm like, oh, it's finish the sex scene, eh? Time to eat that candy.
Then for continuity's sake, you have 12? To stay.
I've got a for some. We're gonna get off on sex scenes, but
so to speak.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of them, so it's.
I cannot imagine.
Oh my God.
I can't imagine acting in the first place because I'm too self-conscious for that. But then to do the sex scene on top of that, no, thank you.
What if it was somebody you really? Come on.
I think I would be terrified.
I could tell you 5 people that I'd be like, I'll do it.
Yeah. I love that.
Like if it was, you'd give me the right,
I know. Well, even like Jake Gyllenhaal, who I tell to his face, so he's my future husband.
Yes.
And it's become this joke now between us, where now he says, "Hi, future wife," and he's into the joke. But even him, I think I would be so scared of it. Like I talk a big game, but actually doing it, I'd be like, "Oh God, how do I look next to you?"
Oh my God, I've done so many of them that I have, from Gary. I've got them from Drew Carey, Jay Moore, all of them. The things that they say to you while you're there, they're good, bad, funny, horrifying, all in one. It's a horrifying thing. It's never fun.
And it's never sexy.
No.
Like it looks. It's all choreographed, isn't it?
It's totally choreographed. And, and you're mainly afraid that the crew is secretly recording you.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only thing you're really thinking about.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about either scene or anything like that.
Ugh.
Anyway, well, let's get back to you. And I read a quote. You said films mean everything to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I even already know the answer. We always start the show your first movie that you saw.
Yes.
So tell everyone the first movie that you saw.
Yeah, because it left a big impression on
Yes.
me, and I included this in my second TEDx talk because it was the first time I really realized the power of movies, and that was Never Ending Story. When I was 3 years old, the first time I got to go to a cinema, my mum took me along with my 2 sisters and one of their friends, and I was really excited to get to go to the cinema. It seemed like super excited. I remember I had Tic Tacs that day also, so it was like a big day for me.
Wow.
For young
Tic
Alicia
Tacs.
Malone, for the first time. Then I asked if I could keep the box because I liked the smell. I was a weird kid. So they take me in, and I also loved horses at the time. So it gets to the scene with the Swamp of Sadness with Artax the horse, and the idea being that the Swamp of Sadness will swallow up anyone who is really sad. So it's Atreyu and Artax walking along the swamp, and then Artax starts to sink the horse, and slowly sink. And the way that Atreyu was just yelling, like, Artax, come on, please, please. It got me, and I started screaming and yelling and hiding under the seat and just crying, and my mum couldn't console me at all. She had to take me out of the theater because I was just making so much noise, so I didn't get to see the end of that movie too much later. Wow. But even now, when I see Neverending Story, I don't like it because it brings up those traumatic feelings.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, seeing a movie for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it leaves an impression on you.
Oh my God, definitely.
Yeah.
And so that was so growing up in Australia, were the films, did you see films on TV? Is it like it is in America where we have the Late Show and all of that?
Exactly that. So we had Bill Collins, who was our Robert Osborne, who would do the late night classic film, and he would introduce all the films. And I used to actually love recording his intros as well. And I remember once during his Jennifer Blonde's intro, which I loved that movie when I was young, I was transfixed by Marilyn Monroe. He got one of the quotes from the movie wrong, and it used to always annoy me. I was like, no, that's not what they said. But I would watch his intros over and over again, not thinking anything, but just I liked hearing him talk about classic film. And so, my whole family was into movies, classics, independent films, art house, and foreign films. So I was introduced to them from a very young age. I can't remember the first time I saw a movie, but it's just always around. My dad had precarious piles of VHS tapes that looked like they could fall over at any moment, were just filled with movies that he'd recorded from television. Or he would take me out of bed at night and sit me in front of a movie and say, this is Alfred Hitchcock and this is why you should take notice of him. So it was just always there. I didn't realize it was a weird thing until I got to high school and then realized no one else did this.
Right. Well, that's what I was also saying, that once you started your own film club in high school, which is funny. A club of one.
Club of one, yeah. I decided that I was quite outraged by the fact that no one had seen these classic films.
Yeah.
So I carefully programmed, how I would show them and what might entice people in, and things like Breakfast at Tiffany's before I got to the Citizen Kane's and all that stuff. And I would get up in assembly. I would go and block out some studio time, some screening room time, and then get up in assembly and tell everyone, plead my case about why I think everyone should see this film. And I was so shy at the time that it actually amazes me that I had it in me to get up on stage, but I felt like that was my purpose, and I had to get up there, tell everyone about the movie. No one came to my screenings, no one at all. It was always just me, and then the poor teacher had to supervise the screening room because it was after school. Was just like, so I think we should probably call this a day. And I'm like, no, someone will come, surely. Maybe they just didn't see my posters that I put everywhere around school. Then eventually the school principal called me into her office and said, the assemblies are supposed to be for important meetings and notices, so maybe don't talk about your film club anymore. And maybe seeing how, maybe we could just move it to a smaller room if it's just going to be you. And it's like, wow. Yeah.
Did you have because I had my own, again, self-imposed, nobody wanted it, because we had a TV club. We had, or I think, AV club kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we had a TV studio, and it went out. I mean, it was insane that it went out locally.
That's cool.
What do they call it? Public access.
Yeah. That reminds me of seeing that in movies, like in American high school films.
Yeah, I was sort of like the female Jason Schwartzman in Rushmore. So I had a film review show. I would do the review. That. And again, none of the kids would ever, but teachers would stop me and be like, I liked what you said about blue collar. I thought that was
cool.
Really Paul Schrader's. And I was like,
Harvey Keitel,
yeah. But so the teachers were into it. So who gave you encouragement if nobody came to the film club?
Yeah, the film teacher did, and I cannot remember her name, which is terrible of me because she did make such an impression on me. But I did so in years 11 and 12 at my high school in Canberra. we did have film as a subject, and not many people took it, but that was like, yes, I'm signing up for this. And she really encouraged me, and I was also really wanting to do well in that class because my older sister Yvette had come first in that class and won the film prize, and I was like, I want to win the film prize. I came second in the end, but anyway, but I learned a lot. She was really encouraging of it. Because other than that, I really started to keep it to myself. But I would experiment with my stepfather's camcorder at the time. Like, I would go out and I would make little movies of my own and edit at home using like record pause on the VCR.
Yeah.
Before editing I had access to editing equipment. And I made a year 12 video where I went around and asked everyone with a pretend microphone, like, where will you be in 10 years' time? And so it's funny now to look back and be like, oh, that's what I'm doing now. But at the time, I couldn't articulate what I wanted.
Do you have any of those?
I do have that video somewhere. It's on VHS.
great.
I'll have to transfer it to DVD. And I know it's got a lot of these like snow in between each cut because it wasn't clean. But I'd love to see it now. It'd be super embarrassing.
You should cut it in between
terrible.
your big celebrity interviews.
Yeah, just my show reel. It'd be my
I've
new
been
show
doing
reel.
this for a long time.
Take a look, Exhibit A.
I'm
Roll
a
the clip.
professional. So from doing that, because I know when I was in high school, I actually did, until they found out I was way, way underage, there was a local television, Channel 3 in Hartford, Connecticut, WFSB. There was a show called PM Magazine.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I actually lied my way in with like video from the high school of my movie reviews, and I got an interview until the guy basically was like, what are you, like 15? You know, yes, I am. And then I didn't get the job, but he said, oh, I like your stuff. And, you know.
Yeah.
But so what, did you have that trajectory?
By the time I ended high school, I decided I wanted to work in television. I did want to be a film director when I was younger. And it was the case of, you know, I had people like Gillian Armstrong and Jane Campion, Agnes Varda, and these kind of women to look to, but there wasn't a lot. And I used to read film history books voraciously, and I never heard stories about women in film, apart from the stars. So I started to think that it was maybe too hard to be a director, and I, being really shy, didn't think that I had the ability to be able to lead a crew. So I ended up changing my thought to wanting to work in television. It seemed like it was quick and fast and exciting. So after school, the day after I graduated high school, I moved up to Sydney, decided I wasn't going to go to university, much to the horror of my mum, who just wanted me to do something. So I had some degree. And I started working I started in a television production course, which was just very general and very out of date. They had those cameras where you put the VHS tape in the side, which at the time were obsolete, but they were like, this is the new technology. So it was pretty hopeless in that regard. But through there, I met a girl who got a job at the local television station, Channel 7, through her high school drama teacher. And then it was the Olympics were coming up in Sydney in the year 2000, so they needed more people. So then she roped me in, and that's where I started actually working within television. And I started out by rolling the teleprompter.
Oh.
So that's why I'm kind of good at it now, because I've practiced for so many years.
I love I wish I had teleprompter in real life.
I know, all the time.
Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can I look at the teleprompter?
Yeah, who's rolling this thing? Where's my script?
And so then when you were, did you become a reporter first there and then move to America?
I became a reporter in Australia. So similar to you, I just kind of pitched my own way in.
Yeah.
And just said that I could do more than I actually could.
That's lie.
What you got to do, you know, figure it out later.
Yeah.
Say yes, figure it out later. So I just started out doing the teleprompter, and then I moved to doing graphics and started lots of different roles behind the scenes at Channel 7.
Now, when you were doing all of this, were you like me, like dressed to the nines, like someday? Like,
someday. I wasn't, and I should have been.
Oh, see, when I worked in PR, which I write about, I was like, every day I'd walk, I'd be like, I'm going to be discovered, elevate, you know. And then like when I actually was, when that actually happened, when Frank Perry was like, you're an actress, right? Come in my office and do a monologue. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? But so did you?
I know, I should have done that, because by the time I started on camera and I went back to the people who first hired me to pitch myself on camera, they were like, but you're the girl that sits in the corner, the goes bright red when someone talks to her and wears no makeup and comfortable clothes. So I wish I had, but I didn't have the self-confidence. And even at that stage, I didn't think I could actually do the job in front of the camera. I wanted to, but I was like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough or pretty enough or anything. I had so much self-doubt that plagued me for way longer than it should have. But everything takes its time.
So they and so you were doing that.
Yeah,
and
did
then,
that behind the scenes, and then I got a job at a movie cable network called Movie Channels Australia, and it had 3 channels. It had the classic channel, the indie channel, and the new release. So it was my heaven. They were looking for a producer editor, and I hadn't done either of those things, but I thought I could figure out producer editor. I found out I had the job interview on the Friday. For the Monday, over that weekend, I taught myself Final Cut Pro.
Wow.
And I walked in and I was like, well, I know Final Cut Pro for editing. And they said, well, don't worry, we use Avid, so we'll give you training. I was like, oh, phew, thank God. But I blagged my way into that job. They were impressed that I worked at Channel 7. I may have expanded my role back at Channel 7 a little bit more to get that job. But I knew I could figure it out. Then once I was there, I was producing, editing, writing several different movie shows that would go in between the movies. And I started to hear the promo people going, you know, we've got this 2-minute 30 slot that we can't quite fill. There's going to be just too many 30-second promos if we keep that slot, because they tried to start the movies on the hour. And then I noticed that on our shoots that I was producing with another host, we'd never use the full 4-hour call from the cameraman. We'd only use 2 hours, but we'd pay them for 4. And so I started thinking, well, this could be a good opportunity for me if I can come up with an idea for a show that fits in that gap that they need, that we can shoot and I can edit and produce, and we can do it on the back of this other shoot, then maybe I have a chance at hosting too. So I went in and pitched that, and I was like, yeah, we could do this, and I could host too. And they were like, all right, we'll give you a go. So that's what started it all on air. And
I always think that's important to kind of volunteer. People always ask me advice, and I said you should volunteer because people love to have you work for free.
Exactly.
And then you also solved a problem too.
Yeah.
By volunteering.
Right. You step in and you find a role for yourself.
Yeah,
and then they can't get rid of you.
A role for yourself that you know, and you think about the stuff that they might say in return, like, well, we don't have enough money. Like, well, this won't cost you any extra.
Yes.
So it's just coming up with those, and then I was terrible at first. I could never look at that footage.
Oh, really?
I'm terrible.
So, Jane, self-conscious or?
Self-conscious, yeah. I had to really put on the sort of fake it till you make it thing when I first started.
Like,
hi, I'm a presenter. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Malone. And it was so over the top that even now I have to train myself out of that and just try and be more authentic, because I think I got so used to like stepping into that confident role. But I did that for a while, and then I started doing red carpets and junkets in Australia. And then another thing that I volunteered for, I heard that Channel 7 was starting a new morning show, and they were looking for a DVD reviewer back in DVD times.
Wow.
And they called me up saying, can we audition the host that you work with? And I said, sure, but do you mind if I come along and audition as well? And again, they were like, you're the shy girl, but why not? So then, by then, you know, makeup, hair, clothes, I had that all sorted. And because I'd spent so long behind the scenes watching people do these segments, I knew how to do it. So I just naturally could throw to a clip, pick up from that, wrap it up, do my review. And then I heard someone else had the job. So I called up the producer and I said, can I just get some feedback? Just want to know what I could do better next time. And he said, I haven't seen your audition yet. Let me go have a look at it and call you back. And then 5 minutes later, he was like, you've got the job.
Wow.
So that's kind of just how I started doing it.
Now, did you have the inevitable, or have you had the inevitable live goofs that always show up on you? Not that you have any on YouTube, but those kind of.
Not too badly, not in terms of live.
Right.
Only stuff that I've been able to edit out myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about the dreaded hot mic?
Oh no! Thank God. I think actually the worst I had was, I just said, I couldn't remember. This is to Ben Mendelsohn actually back in Australia, and this was live, but I couldn't remember what this was called. You know, when you do that with someone. Yeah. I'm just doing
fist bump.
Yeah, fist bump. Yeah, for people listening at home, fist bump. So I said, fist me. And I said it so enthusiastically, and he just looked at me like, and I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't, no, I'm sorry, it's, and I went bright red, and then I had trouble recovering from that, but that's probably as bad as.
That's a good
as
one,
bad as
though.
I got,
That is
so innocent.
I love stuff like that. So then, who was your first, like, so when you started sitting down and doing interviews, like, who were like some of your first big interviews? Like, how did you come up with your quest? I guess that's always the thing that people always want to know. Like, how do you come up with your questions?
Yeah, I had been at that stage writing questions for the other hosts, and by doing that, I just really would delve into a lot of research and then try and think of the answers that you need to get in order to be able to make the package, because people do need to know what the movie's about, in case they haven't heard of it before. But how do you ask that in an interesting way that is not just tell me about your movie, tell me about your character, and just trying to notice little details in the film that maybe a line that stands out or a detail from a character and putting that in. And I'm always someone who does so much more research than I actually need. But it comes in handy when you can just script your questions and then go off on another tangent or follow a story where it goes and feel confident in that. But I started out thinking of, like, how can I do some kind of a signature and also increase my confidence at the same time? Because I was really nervous about, you walk into these rooms, these junket rooms, and they're filled with publicists and cameramen. You've got the star in the middle, he's tired, they've been doing interviews all day, you have 4 minutes, and you're like, how can I quickly establish some kind of rapport? So I decided something that would be scary to me would be hugging these celebrities, because I'm not like a naturally affectionate person, and they're the people you're not supposed to touch because they're like otherworldly.
I'm sure they say, like, do not.
No physical contact.
Yeah, don't shake their hand.
And I've talked about this on the show. There's like people that are like, don't look at him. And then I'm like, and then you do, and it's
like,
fine.
It's fine. Yeah, except for when I tried to shake the hand of Gwyneth Paltrow, and she just looked at me, and so I turned it into a point at her shoes, like, no shoes.
Did you say fist me?
Yeah, she said that. Fist me. So I thought
how come she didn't shake your hand?
No, she didn't. Well, and they didn't warn me. Apparently, she doesn't want to shake hands. I don't know, or maybe she was sick that day. Who knows?
It's gonna upset her.
Usually, they tell you. Yeah, they tell you before you go.
Like, don't touch her.
In there, like, don't shake their hands, which is so awkward because you're like, hi, you just wave at them from across the room, hi, and then sit down.
That's funny.
So I was like, I started asking for hugs, and that kind of became my signature thing and something that people would remember me by. And and when the cameras are rolling, not many people say no to a hug. Because it's like, it's a nice thing to ask.
And so, did anyone hug you too long? I like hugs.
I almost hugged. We met for the first time today, and I almost hugged you when you came in. I was like, I'm not supposed to.
I never know.
We are totally hugging when we're done with this.
Okay, good. Because also in Australia, there's the kiss on the cheek. Everyone does the hug and the kiss on the cheek.
Nice.
And when I first moved here, and I met someone, and I kissed them on the cheek the first time, they were like, what? And they just recoiled. I was like, I'm not meaning anything by it. Just trying to be friendly.
Now, is it true that you said Oprah Winfrey is the best
hugs?
Yeah. What's so good about Oprah?
She's so warm.
Really?
Warm and inviting.
Physically warm.
Yeah, physically warm. Physically warm, and you feel so comfortable in her arms.
I would think she'd be an intimidating person.
I was so nervous.
She's Oprah.
That was, Oprah. I was like, how am I interviewing Oprah? Someone I grew up watching and studying her style of interviews and how she connects with people and always has the aha moment. Like, how can I do that? And so I was so nervous. I think I was number 46 of the day.
Oh my God.
4-minute interviews. And so I walked in and they said, this is Alicia Malone from Australia. And she was behind a curtain just getting changed. And all I heard was this voice saying, Australia! And I just relaxed straight away. And then she came out, arms outstretched, and just grabbed me. So straight away put me at ease. And then the thing that she did with everyone there, so you don't take it personally, is, that's a great question, Alicia. She used my name in every single answer. So interesting, Alicia. And it makes you feel good, even though you know this is what she does to everyone.
Yes.
She's like, yes, Alicia, yes. And so I was just like, I'm impressing Oprah.
When it's did you ever date anyone you interviewed? Did you ever have like
I've gone on a date with people I've interviewed.
That's like a good interview then. That's gone really well.
And I've had someone who will not be named who has asked me multiple times over years at junkets, but but especially
gotta
those
get it
4
on a hot
minute
mic. Gotta get it on a hot.
Especially those 4-minute interviews, you're like, you can't. Yeah, and also, how does that look to a room of publicists? Like, he's like, give your number to my publicist. I'm like,
What?
I'm not doing that. Imagine walking up and being like, hi, here's my number. It's like, no, I'm going to look terrible if I do that. Plus, I'm not impressed by celebrity, and I don't really, unless I have that connection with them. So it took me a while. It took me 3 years before I agreed to go out with him.
Well, I noticed with the junkets, which I think is a bummer. Back in the old days, you'd do the solo interviews, and you'd be every star would be in their own room, and you go room to room to room. Now they do this double up and triple up thing, where if I'm paired and with the star, I'm not going to get to talk.
I know.
I'm just going to sit there. And
it's so hard. And then there's always a room that's kind of like the spare room, where they just put together 3 characters who actually don't interact at all in a movie and are the lesser names.
That's me.
No, not at all.
No,
but you know that
me and the dog.
they're not going to be used in the package, and you feel bad.
They know it. No.
But they know it.
No,
they're usually the nicest, though.
They pair me up with like the guy.
Yeah.
That's usually back in the day I would get the thing, but now they're like, we're going to put you with the comic.
And it's often strategic too. It's like these two work well together, or like you're more experienced, maybe it's someone new who needs help.
Yes.
So then you can save them with your answers, that kind of thing.
I find them challenging when you do them at Sundance. The key is you've got to be horrible and just grab the first seat, because I'm sorry,
it's true.
I'm a hog.
You just got to do it.
But you got to go in, because otherwise, if you're in the third seat, they're never going to get to you.
No, they won't. They won't at all.
Oh well. So now I want to talk about your TED Talks, because I think that's incredible. The first thing I asked you off camera, I was like, "Do you have to memorize that?"
Yes.
That alone. But so tell me about the experience of even being asked to do a TED Talk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who somehow is a really good manifester. I put work with TCM on my vision board 5 years ago, and I also put write a book when I was young, and I also put TED Talk when I was teenager or older, when I started being aware of these talks. And I was doing a lot of stuff on YouTube and these popular mainstream movie shows, and they were often, a lot of big male audience, and all the other people on the panel were often men. And I would just say things casually like, there should be more women with non-stereotypical roles in movies.
Right.
And the amount of hate that I got back from comments on YouTube and the anger about it, that spurred me on to, at first I was like, oh, this is terrible, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Then I was like, no, screw these people, I'm going to speak about it even more, because it's such a shock to them that a woman is speaking out about this. So I started being very vocal on all those shows. And then from there, the organizers of a small TEDx talk in San Juan Islands, just outside of Seattle, approached me and said, you're very vocal about women in film, and you're very supportive of that. Would you want to do a TEDx talk about it? We think you'd have some good perspective. So that was really cool. And then, of course, it was like, oh, gosh, what do I have to say? Because it's the idea worth sharing.
Yeah.
Like, what can I say? And you have to think about things in terms of what can the audience take away from it that they could walk out of the room and put into action straight away. With something like changing Hollywood, that seems like a really big concept.
Right.
So it took me a long time to narrow down the speech, and also they keep encouraging you to add more personal stories, because that actually makes it more interesting, not just statistics and all the other things that could be looked up by Google. But the experience was amazing, and I memorized it all, did my slides, and stand on the red dot. Although something you'll notice if you watch is you can tell that I'm an on-camera person and not like a natural speaker, because everyone else walks around and moves. You just have to stay on the dot, and moves their hands. I'm like in my spot, looking at my mark. I remember to look at the audience, but I do not move from that one spot.
And who is the audience?
It's a mixture of people. It's mainly older, especially in this Seattle town, which is very much a retirement community. So it was older people, but they were very lovely. And there was only about 100 people the first one I went. The second one in Oregon was much bigger. But in my mind all the time was the fact that this lives forever on YouTube. And so that's the bigger thing, that it's designed to appear like you're talking to the people right in front of you, but in reality you want it to be able to work on the internet forever.
Right. And so the first one you did was in 2012?
Yeah.
And so that was just when it dawned, I remember it dawned on me of like, oh, what's happening? Women aren't in movies anymore. Because I grew up in an era where women were the stars of movies, and we were talking about Jane Fonda, and then you got into the 90s, and I said, like, every movie I did was with a woman, Allison Anders. I was working with all sorts of women, Nancy Savoca, and did Wedding Bell Blues. It was like,
it was a lot of executives as well. Yeah,
and I was being hired by Bravo and IFC to write and direct, and I was doing shorts. I was producing shorts, and then it was like I got complacent, and I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I'm not working anymore. And then that's when I started to go in the internet, which was around 2005, and reality TV could change. For me personally, that's what changed everything. Is once Survivor came in, it suddenly, like, it just didn't seem like there was a place for women's stories, men's stories, anybody's stories.
Yeah.
So I moved to the internet, but by 2012, it just seemed like, there were literally no movies about
women. And that was when I started to delve more into statistics. So first I started to speak out about it, and I was like, what? Why are people so angry about this? And then at the time, I probably wouldn't have even called myself a feminist, because I just thought, of course, everyone wants equality. And then I realized how far it is to go, and how you do need to talk about it and name it. So I started to delve into research, and I talked to Dr. Stacey Smith from the Annenberg Institute in my book, and she was the one who I read the statistic of only 4% of the top 100 highest grossing films the year before had been directed by women. And I was like, what? That can't be right. And then delving into it more, I was like, wow, this is a huge problem.
Right.
And again, like, what can I do? But then I feel like I do have the ability to speak on camera and a platform of people that listen to me. So that was when I really decided to make it my purpose and make it an issue, and just educate myself as much as I could.
Well, I feel like that the history, and then your second TED Talk, which you did in 2015, which is interesting, that coincides when we started doing Trailblazing Women.
Yeah.
And then that becomes this whole thing of people like, oh, there were women directors
back
like in the silent era. It wasn't just Dorothy Arzner, like, because that was always held up to me as she and Elaine May were the only female directors. And so then it was discovering all the women from the silent era, and it was unbelievable. And we haven't even gotten to, like, in the show, and we're doing so many people this year, June Mathis.
Yeah, you're doing, like, behind the scenes people this year.
Behind the scenes people that are still, like, writers and
editors.
People that, producers, women producing silent films. I mean, the producer of Ben-Hur. Oh, she's cool. Like, I didn't know it was written and produced by a woman. And it's astonishing to me. So but what we talk about this year is that it's 2017, and although there's been all this information, and some things have changed in the sense that there's there's pioneer projects, and Jodie Foster did a documentary on Alice Guy Blaché, and so there are these things, but it doesn't really still feel like the needle has changed.
I agree, and the thing that I feel is by erasing these stories and not talking about them in film history books and in film classes, then it does set up this whole feeling of it being a man's world. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. So why should it change? Once you start learning about these stories and realizing how many women were involved at the very start of American cinema and during the silent era especially, you go, well, if that happened back then, why not now? Like, why can't we go back to that? And so I love just reframing that idea, because everybody is shocked. I mean, even people in the film industry who know film very well, I'm like, did you know?
Yeah.
And I say about these early women, and people are like, I had no idea about her.
No.
And I feel like that's what we should talk about. So that's why I wanted to write this book. And, someone like you or the TCM audience will be very aware of all these stories. But for people that follow me on YouTube, on Twitter, and all the things that I do, they may have never heard about these women, and it may encourage some young girls to want to be filmmakers.
Now, I want to ask you, because this is what's hard with doing the show, is that do you ever feel like that there's that tokenism of like, you talked, we got it. Women, blah, blah, blah. They were there from the beginning. But you're like, yes, but they were.
Yes, but they were.
But so how do you handle that?
Yeah, I get that all the time. I get like, oh, poor women,
we get it.
You've had such a tough time. We get it. And I think I just have to not give up and try and tell interesting stories that may engage someone just hearing about it for the first time or hearing about it for the 10th time. But yeah, I get that all the time, and I think I just keep pushing on, because then the things that keep me going is I was at the Toronto Film Festival and I had a bunch of young girls come up to me saying, thank you so much for speaking about women, and we really appreciate it, or because of you and now I want to be a filmmaker. And I think that's really great. So I'm like, okay, I'm making some kind of difference. I just got to keep going. But it's hard to come up against that. And also things that I work on, and I did an interview recently that was quite feminist, and then people were like, oh, but this is going to alienate our male viewers. It's like, why are we still thinking about them? Like, it's a good interview, and no one would say, oh, this is too male, this interview, we need to,
Right. Well, that's always the universal question. Do you have to dedicate it once a year? I mean, I think you do. Like, what's wrong with that?
I know.
To highlighting these women, because people, when you say, Lucille Ball ran a studio. Oh yeah, that's right. You know, like people, it's just not written down, yet we can flip off the tip of our tongue all these male, kind of accomplishments. My favorite thing is to ask about the AFI Top 100. There are no, there are no female directed films on the list. If you were gonna,
not one.
Do you have? If you had one,
insane.
I have my sort of picks.
Yeah, I mean, I love so many, but I did get to delve more into Dorothy Arzner, who we mentioned, while writing this book, and I love Dance Girl Dance.
Yes, that's great.
And
we
I think
played
it's such
that
a
one.
beautiful film.
Yeah, it's great.
And it has some scathing things to say about the film industry and about entertainment and women in entertainment, how they're used as objects. And I thought that one was fantastic. But even some more recent movies, like I think that, A League of Their Own should be up there with the classics, because it was so different in terms of having female sports. And as Gina said in the book, nothing happened after that, even though everyone said, this changes everything.
Well, and they even, what's really strange is that I point out every year a list of movies, like The Hitchhiker, Outrage, Ida Lupino, Zero Dark
Outrage
40 would be a great pick. A
Yep.
League of Her Own would be a great pick. Big would be a great pick.
Yep.
I also then I suggested The Piano, and then somebody says, "Well, that's not American." I'm like, "Oh, but Lawrence of Arabia is."
Exactly.
So again, there are these crazy standards for, like, tell me why Lawrence of Arabia is an American film, but
I know, and I get
The Piano
tired
is
of the kind of fresh shock every time a film directed by a woman or starring a woman it does well at the box office.
Yes.
It's like, whoa.
I know, there's
we
always
never
that.
knew this would happen. It's like, look at the history. It's happened so many times.
The surprise hit. That's why it was so much fun to talk to Callie Curry, because I really feel like everything began with Thelma and Louise. And the success of the movie, that then there was a backlash to that success by calling it a chick flick. And what the original reviewer meant was it was about female empowerment. And then somehow chick flick got used to describe rom-coms.
Yes.
It's like a game of telephone.
And like a lesser movie.
Yeah.
People
it's
it's just a chick flick.
It's just a chick flick.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Yeah. So I thought that was...
There's no male equivalent.
So
there.
with your writing your book, how's the experience been?
It's been surreal. It's still strange to see it next to me and see my name on the front cover.
I know, it's the greatest.
It's like, whew. And that was, big, yes, same with yours. And it was a big emotional roller coaster. I mean, imagining more for you because this is your personal life.
Right.
But me even just having to confront, again, those feelings of self-doubt.
Yeah.
Could I actually pull this off?
What was the hardest thing, and then again, what was the most rewarding, but what was the hardest part of writing the book?
The hardest part was securing interviews, which I did think it would be easier, and I kind of built the whole pitch of the book on the premise that once we got to the present day, I would be able to get to talk to a lot of people. And I've built up so many great relationships with publicists and with studios over the years during these press junkets, and I've always played the game, I've always wrapped up in time, I've always asked the good questions and focused on film and not personal stuff. So I thought that there would be more of a sense of helping me out with it, but it was such a tough sell. And it's like, it's going to be published, it's going to be in bookstores, it's going to be good, it's all lovely, and it's a profile on them, and they're going to have their own chapter. But it was such a tough sell. The first person to say yes was actually J.J. Abrams. And once he said yes, because it's not the people involved, it's the publicists who are the stopping point. They would say, who else have you got? You know, and I'd be like, well, I'm talking to all these people. It's just me doing it myself. But once he locked in, then everyone else locked in. And that was great. And so that was also one of the most rewarding things, is getting to talk to these amazing people purely for myself, not thinking about the promotion of the movie or where it will end up, asking what I truly want to ask. And talking to Ava DuVernay after hanging up the phone with her, I was like, I feel like I could take on the world, because she's so cool and she's so sure of herself, and she opens doors for other women, and she's such a great inspirational figure and a talented lady. So that was the most rewarding thing, and just to get it finished and see it there.
What about the experience, which I loved, of just going around the country, and then I don't know if you do readings or meeting people.
Book signings, yes.
Just, like, anyone who read my book.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
I know.
I'm, you know, that to me is like,
yes.
Because I found the process of writing the book easy. The rewrite was the hard part.
Yeah, and I had 5 months to write and rewrite, so it was tough.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. I had about a year. But that once you write it, and then you have to go back and like fill in things, and maybe this chapter, like 2 chapters didn't even make the book. And I was like, what?
I know.
Like, rewrite. It was hard.
Yeah,
so
hard.
You know, you stopped seeing people, and
yeah. Oh yes, I just locked myself in my house. I didn't get out of my pajamas for days. But
you're a writer.
Yeah, I'm a writer. In my acknowledgements, I thank Red Bull, wine, and Tim Tams, which are these chocolate-covered biscuits from Australia, cookies, that they had sent me. Yeah, they sent me them because they just launched in the US. They sent me 9 packets. So that's really what I existed on for 5 months.
And I know you said this a million times, but where does the title come from?
Backwards and in heels. It comes from a quote about Ginger Rogers, that she did everything Fred Astaire did, just backwards and in heels. And to me, I thought that was a great metaphor for women in film, that they've been there right by the men's side the whole way through American film history, but they've had more obstacles to overcome.
Yeah.
So I love that. Was the first title I thought of, and I was like, yes. And actually, that helped me get interviews, because some people are like, I love your title. I'll talk to you just for that. I was like, thank you.
I believe in a good title.
Yeah, I know. I love your title.
And my last question, you work at Filmstruck.
Yes.
We love Filmstruck. We love
Filmstruck.
TCM. And we've got the TCM Film Festival coming up. But tell us a little bit about what Filmstruck is for people out there.
Yeah, it's such a dream job. I couldn't imagine anything more perfect for me, because this is, I say it's like Netflix for cinephiles.
Yeah.
Where it's a collection of, or firstly, it's the streaming home for the Criterion Collection, but a collection of very curated cult films, indie films, art house films, foreign films, kind of the best films from around the world, and some you may never have heard of.
Yeah.
And I'm learning so much by doing this job. I've already, seen a lot of the films on the service, but every time I go to do my intros, I learn more, because I get to see these films that maybe I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah.
So it is great. It's got the curation part of TCM and how careful they are, and as we both know, they're film lovers. They're true. And then you have the might of the Criterion Collection.
And then we've got a long time off, but the TCM Film Festival coming up.
It's my favorite.
It's my favorite. It's like camp.
It's awesome. This is like, here's where you all are. You went there at my film club in high school, but this is a tribe.
These are your people.
There you guys are. You do exist.
True. Anyway, Alicia Malone, thanks so much for coming on. Get the book. You can get the book, right?
Yes, you can get the book, out now, available on Amazon and at bookstores. She's Alicia Malone on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.
Also, you can buy Illeana's book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, out in paperback. Like our Facebook page, and the podcast website is illeanaspodcast.com.
That's right. And as I always say, everyone's life is a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And today is the end of this movie, as I say poignantly. But anyway, thanks so much for being here,
Thank
Alicia.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
See you next time, guys.
So
Thanks.
long. Bye. So many good
From
guests.
producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.